The neon lights of Outpost 9 flickered weakly above the crowded alleys, a mix of noise, steam, and the smell of oil filling the air. Humans, traders, and half-metal scavengers moved through the narrow paths, their eyes tired, their hearts colder than the metal walls around them. Among them walked Evan Rourke, a human chef who owned a tiny food stall called the Star's Bite, tucked between two repair shops. He was not rich, not famous, but his food was warm, and on this forgotten space station, warmth was something rare. That night was quieter than usual, the cold air sharp enough to sting. Evan closed the stall after serving the last miner, wiping his hands with an old towel. He hummed softly, ready to head home. But then, from the corner of his eye, he saw something move near the trash unit behind his stall. At first, he thought it was a rat or a scavenger drone, but then he saw her. A thin figure crouched in the shadows, trembling. The light from the neon sign flickered over her face, and his breath caught. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faintly blue, her hair tangled and silver white like threads of moonlight. Her clothes were torn, her hands shaking as she searched through the pile of discarded food. Evan froze, his heart tightening at the sight. The girl looked barely alive, her eyes wide and glowing faintly violet in the dark. When he stepped closer, she hissed softly, clutching a piece of metal like a knife. "Hey," Evan said quietly, keeping his distance. "Easy there." Her voice came out weak, broken. "I'm just hungry." He could hear the desperation behind her words, the sound of someone who had stopped believing in kindness. Evan slowly reached into his stall, took a bowl, and poured what was left of the soup inside. The smell of spices and cooked protein filled the air. He set it down near her feet and stepped back, raising both hands. "No tricks," he said, "just food." The alien girl stared at him for a long moment, her eyes full of doubt and fear. Then, slowly, she crawled closer, sniffing the bowl like a wild creature. When she took the first spoonful, she flinched, as if warmth itself hurt. But then she ate again, faster this time, her hands trembling with every bite. Evan watched in silence, his chest heavy. He could see scars running down her wrists, marks that looked like burns. He wondered who had hurt her, and why she was alone. When the bowl was empty, she looked up at him, her lips barely moving. "Why?" Evan blinked. "Why what?" "Why help me?" she whispered. He gave a small, tired smile. "Because no one else will." The girl lowered her head, her glowing eyes softening for the first time. She whispered her name, Kira, the sound almost like music. Evan nodded. "I'm Evan." They stood there in silence for a while, the hum of machines echoing around them. Then Kira swayed, her legs giving out, and she fell forward. Evan rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her body was light, too light. He carried her inside the stall, laid her on the bench where customers usually sat. He covered her with his coat, his thoughts spinning. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but he couldn't just leave her outside. When he touched her wrist, he saw faint metal implants under her skin, old slave tags, burned out but still visible. She had escaped something terrible, that much was clear. Evan sat beside her, watching as her breathing steadied. She murmured something in her sleep, a word he didn't understand. Outside, the neon lights flickered again, painting the walls with colors of red and blue. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of galaxy lets children starve in the dirt. Maybe he couldn't fix the world, but tonight, he had saved one soul from it. As the outpost slept, the human chef stayed awake beside the alien girl. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of kindness, one bowl of soup offered in a forgotten alley, would start a chain of events that would change the fate of entire worlds. When Kira woke up, the smell of warm bread filled the air. Soft light flickered through the cracks of the metal shutters, and the hum of old generators echoed around the small kitchen. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, her heart racing. But then she saw the human, Evan, standing by the stove, flipping bread on an iron pan. He glanced back and smiled gently. "You're awake." She sat up slowly, confusion in her violet eyes. "Why didn't you call the guards?" Evan shrugged. "Because you're not a criminal." Kira didn't answer, her fingers touching the edge of the coat he'd placed over her. It was old, patched many times, but warm. She whispered, "I shouldn't be here. They'll come looking." Evan turned, placing a plate of food in front of her, bread, soup, and a small glass of water. They can look all they want, he said. You need to eat first. Her stomach growled before she could argue, and she began to eat in small, careful bites. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of spoons scraping against bowls. After a while, Evan leaned against the counter, arms folded. So what's your story? Kira's eyes darkened, her voice low. No story, just running. He didn't push, but he saw the tremor in her hands. She was hiding more than just hunger. Outside, the outpost came alive. The buzz of markets, the sound of ships landing, the clatter of mechanical limbs. But inside his stall, it felt strangely quiet, safe. When she finally finished eating, she stood. Thank you. I'll go now. Go where? Evan asked, raising an eyebrow. She froze, her mouth opening but no words coming. He sighed, wiping his hands. You can't just wander out there. The patrols will see you. Her eyes flashed with panic. Then what should I do? He looked at her for a moment, thinking, then said, Work here. Kira blinked, confused. Work? Yeah, he said. I could use some help. Washing dishes, cleaning, maybe serving customers when you're ready. Her expression shifted between disbelief and fear. You trust me? You don't even know who I am. Evan smiled faintly. I know you're hungry, and I know you didn't steal from me. That's enough. Kira stared at him, trying to understand this strange human logic. No one had ever offered her anything before. People had ordered her, used her, bought her, but offered her? Never. She lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. I don't want to be a burden. Evan shook his head. You're not. You'll earn your keep. Fair and simple. He handed her a small apron, faded and patched. She looked at it as if it were a priceless gift, her eyes shimmering faintly. Hours passed as she tried to learn. She washed plates, spilled water, burned her fingers once, and apologized a dozen times. Evan laughed softly, showing her how to hold the pan properly. Slow down, he said. You're not in a race. By the end of the shift, she was exhausted, but there was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. When she looked at herself in the reflection of the steel counter, she almost didn't recognize the face staring back. She looked alive again. That night, as they closed the stall, Evan handed her a small piece of bread wrapped in paper. For later, he said, just in case you get hungry. Kira hesitated before taking it, her voice quiet. Humans are strange. Evan chuckled. You're not wrong. Later, after she fell asleep in the corner of the kitchen, Evan sat near the window, looking out at the stars beyond the cracked glass. He couldn't explain why he had done it. Helping her, giving her a job. It just felt right. He had seen too much cruelty in the galaxy. Too many people walking past suffering as if it were invisible. Maybe kindness was the only rebellion left. Outside, the neon lights blinked through the darkness, the same way the stars did across the void. And somewhere in the deep silence of the outpost, a patrol ship passed overhead, its scanners sweeping the alleys. They were searching for something, or someone. Evan didn't know it yet, but the girl sleeping in his kitchen wasn't just another runaway. She carried a secret, one that could shake the entire system. And soon, the quiet life of a simple human chef would turn into something far greater than he ever imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the little food stall began to change. Customers who once came for a quick meal now stayed longer, drawn by the quiet alien girl who served them with shy politeness. Kira still spoke little, but there was a calm grace in her every move, and people noticed. Evan watched her grow stronger, though sometimes he caught her staring at the sky with a faraway look, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. One morning, before the market opened, Evan found her standing outside, her hands glowing faintly blue as she touched the stall's old generator. Sparks danced across the metal, and the machine that hadn't worked in months suddenly hummed to life. Evan blinked in shock. How did you do that? Kira turned quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. I didn't. It just worked. He frowned, realizing she was hiding something, but he didn't press her. She had saved him the cost of a new generator, and that was enough for now. Later that evening, a group of dock soldiers walked through the alley, scanning faces. Their armor bore the mark of the Consortium, a powerful galactic faction known for slavery and bioexperiments. Kira froze when she saw them, her body trembling. Evan whispered, You know them, don't you? She nodded slightly. They own me. He felt a chill run through him, understanding now what those burned implants on her wrists meant. When the soldiers passed by, Kira ducked behind the counter, eyes wide with terror. Evan kept his voice calm. They're gone. But her breathing didn't slow. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're safe here. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. You don't understand. If they find me, they'll take you too. Evan smiled sadly. Then they'll have to get through me first. That night, after closing, Kira couldn't sleep. The small stall felt warm, but her mind was full of fire and noise. She remembered the labs, the pain, the endless experiments. They had called her prototype E13, not Kira. They had forced her to use her gift, her ability to manipulate energy, to power weapons she didn't believe in. And when she escaped, they had branded her as a runaway asset, not a living being. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to the stars outside. I just wanted to be free. Evan heard her crying from the other side of the curtain. He didn't speak. He just sat near her, listening quietly. He knew what loneliness sounded like. After the war, he too had lost his home, his friends, his purpose. Maybe that's why he couldn't let her go. In a galaxy full of machines and monsters, maybe kindness was the only thing still human. The next day, he pretended not to notice the faint blue light in her palms. Instead, he asked, Ever cooked before? Kira blinked, confused. Cooked? Yeah, he said, handing her a ladle. Time to learn something new. She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. And for the next hour, the kitchen filled with laughter and clumsy mistakes. She spilled flour, dropped a spoon, and nearly burned the soup. Evan laughed. You're dangerous with utensils. Kira giggled softly. Maybe I should stick to energy instead. The moment she said it, she froze, realizing she had revealed too much. But Evan only smiled. Energy, cooking, both can warm people if used right. That night, as the last customer left, a small drone hovered outside the window, red lights scanning through the steam. Evan didn't notice, but Kira did. Her heart pounded. She whispered under her breath, and the lights in the stall flickered. The drone sparked and fell to the ground, its signal cut off. Evan stepped outside, confused. What was that? Kira looked pale. They've found me. For the first time since she arrived, fear filled her eyes completely. She turned toward the door, ready to run, but Evan grabbed her wrist gently. You're not going anywhere alone. She shook her head. You don't know what they'll do. He looked at her with quiet certainty. Then we'll face it together. Kira's lips parted, a mix of fear and wonder. No one had ever said we before. Only you. Only it. And in that moment, for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like property. She felt like a person. Outside, the night air hummed with tension. Somewhere beyond the markets, engines roared to life, soldiers shouting orders through comms. The hunt had begun again. But this time, the runaway wasn't alone. And humanity, in the form of one stubborn chef, was about to stand against an empire built on cruelty. The next morning came with a strange stillness. Usually the market outside buzzed with noise, but today the air felt heavy. Evan noticed fewer traders, fewer ships, and the faint echo of boots on metal streets. Kira stood by the window, her violet eyes scanning the fog. They're here, she whispered. Evan moved beside her, following her gaze. Down the main corridor, armored soldiers marched in formation, their scanners sweeping the stalls one by one. Their armor shone silver under the neon lights, and the insignia of the consortium burned bright across their chests. Evan's heart pounded. If they're searching, they'll reach us soon. Kira turned, fear clear in her face. I'll go. I can't let them hurt you. He shook his head. Running won't work. They'll track your energy signature. Her hands trembled, faint blue sparks dancing along her skin. I can hide it, she said. I can shut it down. But the moment she tried, pain flashed through her. Her knees buckled, and Evan caught her before she fell. Enough, he said firmly. You're not destroying yourself just to protect me. He guided her behind the counter. Stay low. Outside, the soldiers' voices grew louder, their boots striking the metal floor like thunder. Unit 7, scan every food vendor. The target may disguise herself as local labor. Evan grabbed a box of supplies, pushing it near the front door, trying to look busy. The door hissed open, and 3 soldiers stepped inside, weapons holstered but ready. One of them, tall and cold-eyed, spoke in a flat tone. "Human, we're searching for a fugitive of high value. Blue skin, silver hair, seen near this sector." Evan kept his expression calm. "You think I'd have time to hide aliens while cooking stew?" The officer's visor tilted, scanning the room. Kira held her breath behind the counter, her heart beating so loudly she thought they could hear it. The scanner's red light swept past the wall, flickered for a second, then moved on. Evan forced a smile, satisfied. The officer stared for a long moment before turning away. "Keep your stall closed today, human." When the door closed behind them, Evan exhaled slowly, his hands shaking. Kira rose from her hiding place, eyes wide. "They didn't sense me, how?" Evan looked at the wall where she'd hidden. The metal panels had faint burn marks. "You did something, didn't you?" he asked. Kira nodded weakly. "I bent the scanner signal, but it won't work twice." Evan looked toward the alley, already hearing the shouts of other patrols. "They'll search again," he muttered. "We need to leave." Kira hesitated. "Leave? Where would we go?" He pointed toward the docks. "I have a friend, old cargo pilot. Owes me a favor. He can get us off station." She shook her head. "If they find out you helped me, they'll brand you a traitor." He smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'll be in good company." They packed quickly, throwing tools, food packs, and credits into a small crate. Kira paused at the doorway, looking back at the stall. It had been her first home since freedom, the first place she'd felt safe. Evan touched her shoulder. "We'll rebuild somewhere else." They stepped into the dim corridor, the hum of engines filling the air. Every shadow felt alive, every echo a threat. They moved through the back routes, avoiding the main streets. Kira guided them, her senses sharp. "That way," she whispered. "I can feel the scanners sweeping left." As they neared the docks, a shout rang out behind them. "Stop right there." The soldiers had found them, red beams cutting through the mist. Evan pulled Kira into an old maintenance tunnel, the air thick with dust and heat. They ran, footsteps echoing off metal walls, the sound of blasters charging close behind. Kira turned, raising her hand, light bursting from her palm in a wave of blue energy. The tunnel walls shook, and a metal gate slammed down behind them, blocking the soldiers' path. Evan stared in awe. "You said you couldn't use it." She breathed heavily. "I said I shouldn't." They reached a side hatch that opened to the outer docks. A single cargo ship waited, small, rusted, but alive. Evan tapped on the hatch, and an old man with cybernetic eyes opened it. "Evan, you're supposed to be dead." "Not yet," Evan said, pulling Kira forward. "We need a lift." The man frowned. "That's consortium property you're carrying." "She's not property," Evan snapped. "She's my friend." The pilot looked between them, sighed, and muttered, "Get in before I change my mind." As the hatch closed and the engines roared to life, Kira looked out the window. Below, Outpost 9 grew smaller, fading into a sea of stars. For the first time since her escape, she felt air that didn't smell of fear. Evan stood beside her, watching the void ahead. He didn't know where they were going, or what waited beyond. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let the galaxy take her back. And in that endless dark, humanity's light, a simple act of kindness, burned brighter than ever. The cargo ship trembled as it left the orbit of Outpost 9. Engines roared, rattling the walls, and a faint blue glow filled the cockpit. Evan sat strapped into a worn seat, while Kira held the edge of the console, her eyes wide with awe and fear. She had never seen the stars this close before, not through glass, not without chains. The pilot, a gruff old man named Harlan Dax, muttered under his breath, "You've really done it this time, Evan." Evan smirked. Wouldn't be the first time someone said that. Kira looked between them, her voice soft. "Will they follow us?" Harlan snorted. "Oh, they'll follow. Those consortium hounds never let go of their toys." Evan frowned. "Then we move fast." Harlan tapped a few buttons. The ship shuddered again as the stars stretched into long silver lines. "Jumping to drift space," he said. "Hang on." Kira gripped the seat tighter, her heart racing as the world outside turned into swirling light. She whispered, "It's beautiful." Evan smiled faintly. "You get used to it." For a while, silence filled the ship, only the low hum of the reactor echoing through the halls. Evan brought Kira a blanket and a small metal cup of water. "Drink," he said. You're safe for now. But Kira shook her head. Safe doesn't last. He looked at her carefully. Maybe it doesn't, but we'll make it last as long as we can. She nodded slowly, holding the cup close. Later, as they drifted through the void, Harlan called from the cockpit. We've got company. Evan rushed forward, the radar blinking with red dots. Consortium drones, Harlan growled. Fast ones. Kira's eyes widened. How did they find us? They probably tagged your energy signature back at the outpost, Harlan replied, flipping switches. Evan strapped himself beside the old man. Can you outfly them? Harlan grinned. Watch me. The cargo ship dove through the debris fields of an abandoned mining sector. Rocks and broken satellites spun around them like glass rain. Laser fire streaked past the hull, shaking the ship violently. Kira fell to her knees, clutching the floor. Evan ran to her. Stay down. A blast rocked the rear engine, sparks showering across the corridor. Harlan shouted. We lost the stabilizer. Smoke filled the air, alarms screamed. Kira looked at the control panel, her hands glowing faintly blue. I can fix it, she said. Evan shouted. You'll burn yourself. She met his eyes, calm and steady. Let me try. She pressed her palms against the wall, lights spilling from her fingertips like liquid fire. Circuits hummed back to life, the shaking slowed, and the red alarms faded to yellow. Harlan's eyes went wide. Well, I'll be damned. Evan grabbed her shoulder, helping her stand. You did it. But Kira's face was pale, her body trembling from the energy drain. She whispered weakly, they won't stop. Evan looked through the cockpit window. The drones were still there, closer than before. Then he saw something else, a field of metallic storms ahead. Can we hide in there, he asked. Harlan hesitated. That's the grave belt, full of magnetic storms. One wrong move, and we're space dust. Evan clenched his jaw. Better dust than prisoners. Harlan cursed. Fine, hold on. The ship dove into the chaos, lightning flashing across the black. Waves of energy slammed against the hull, but the drones hesitated outside, unable to follow. Kira collapsed into her seat, exhausted but smiling faintly. They can't track us in here. Evan knelt beside her. You saved us again. For the first time since leaving the station, they could breathe. Outside, the storms painted the sky in colors of gold and violet. Kira stared at the swirling lights, her voice quiet. When I was in the labs, I used to dream about this. The stars, freedom, the taste of air that wasn't recycled. Evan leaned back, his voice soft. Then keep dreaming, because now it's real. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering. You keep saving me, why? He smiled faintly. Because maybe saving someone else is the only way I can save myself. Harlan coughed, pretending not to listen. We'll rest here for a while, charge the core, then find a quiet planet. Evan nodded. Good. Kira leaned her head against the window, watching the storm fade around them. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel hunted. She felt human. But deep in the sensors, a faint red signal pulsed unseen. The consortium hadn't lost them. It had only marked the trail. And far away, on a command ship cloaked in the black of space, a voice said coldly, Prototype I-13 has resurfaced. Prepare the retrieval fleet. The storm around the ship faded into calm darkness. Harlan wiped the sweat from his brow and muttered, We're lucky to be alive. Evan looked out the window, the swirling lights of the grave belt vanishing behind them. Kira sat quietly, her eyes half closed, her energy drained but her heart steady. When she opened them again, she whispered, There's a system ahead, uncharted. I can feel it. Harlan frowned. Feel it? You got sensors in your bones now. Kira smiled weakly, something like that. Evan nodded. Let's check it out. The ship drifted through the silent void until a small blue-green world appeared ahead. It shimmered like a pearl wrapped in mist, its surface dotted with forests and silver lakes. Harlan whistled softly. Didn't know anything livable was out here. Evan leaned closer. Can you land? Yeah, the pilot grunted. But if the consortium scans this zone, we're on our own. Evan smiled faintly. That's fine. We've been on our own since the start. They broke through the atmosphere, clouds glowing orange around the hull. The ship landed in a quiet valley near a river, the sound of water echoing against green cliffs. When the ramp lowered, Kira stepped out first, her bare feet touching soft grass for the first time in her life. She looked around, her voice trembling. It's beautiful. The air was fresh, warm, filled with the sound of birds that glowed faintly in the dusk. Evan followed her, carrying a crate of supplies. For a long moment, they just stood there, watching the twin suns sink below the horizon. They built a small camp near the ship. Harlan fixed the comms while Evan made a fire from local driftwood that burned with a blue flame. Kira sat by the fire, her hair reflecting the light like starlight caught in glass. She looked peaceful, but Evan saw something in her eyes, a shadow she couldn't escape. He sat beside her, handing her a cup of steaming broth. "You still think they'll find us?" he asked. She nodded. "They always do." He sighed, staring into the fire. "Then we'll face them again." She turned toward him. "You'd risk your life for me, a stranger?" Evan smiled faintly. "You stopped being a stranger the day you ate my soup." That night, Kira wandered to the riverbank alone. She stared at her reflection, the faint blue light glowing under her skin. She whispered to herself, "You can't keep running." Her reflection shimmered, and for a brief second, another image appeared, a vast room, glowing machines, and voices calling her name. She clutched her head, pain surging through her mind. When Evan found her, she was kneeling by the water, trembling. He rushed to her side. "Kira, what's wrong?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're connected to me. I can feel them through the signal. They're using my energy to trace us." Evan's expression hardened. "Then we cut the connection." Kira looked up. "You can't, it's part of me." "Then we find another way," he said. He helped her back to the camp, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Harlan looked up from his tools. "Everything all right?" Evan nodded slowly. "Not yet, but we'll get there." The next morning, the valley glowed under soft sunlight. Evan and Kira worked together to gather fruit and set up solar panels. She laughed softly as she tasted something sweet for the first time, her smile bright and unguarded. For a brief moment, the galaxy felt far away. She helped him cook, their hands brushing as they passed the ladle. Evan caught himself smiling. "You're learning fast." Kira looked at him, her voice gentle. "You gave me a reason to." But as the day faded, Harlan's comm device crackled with static. He frowned, twisting the dial. "That's not local interference." A cold mechanical voice echoed through the static. "Signal lock confirmed. Retrieval fleet inbound." Kira's eyes widened in horror. Evan grabbed his pack. "They found us already?" Harlan cursed. "They must have followed her neural trace. Damn it." Evan turned to Kira. "We need to leave, now." But Kira shook her head, tears forming. "No, running won't stop them. They'll never stop unless I do." He stepped closer. "What are you saying?" She looked at him with calm determination. "It's time I face what they made me." Evan wanted to argue, but he saw the fire in her eyes, the same light that had frightened him once. Now it was something else, something powerful. The soft wind carried the scent of the alien forest as she whispered, "If they come for me, they'll find more than their weapon." Evan took a slow breath, his voice low. "Then they'll find humanity standing with you." Kira smiled, a single tear glowing against her blue skin. "Then maybe they'll finally see what that means." The sky above the valley began to flicker with distant lights. Engines, signals, and warships moving through the clouds like shadows of judgment. The peace of the hidden planet was over. But this time, Kira wasn't running. And Evan Rourke, the humble human chef, stood ready to fight beside her. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness in the galaxy can spark the brightest rebellion. The hidden planet shook under the distant roar of engines. Red lights streaked across the sky as the consortium fleet approached. Kira stood at the edge of the valley, her hands glowing bright blue. Evan stepped beside her, holding a makeshift blaster, though he knew it could do little against the enemy ships. Harlan moved quietly to the cockpit, ready to take off if the fight went wrong. Kira's voice was calm, but her heart raced. "They're coming for me, for us." Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We faced them together." The first squad of soldiers landed near the river, weapons aimed, scanning for energy signatures. Kira bent slightly, her glowing hands sending a ripple through the ground. Metal gates twisted, rocks lifted, a wave of energy shielding the camp. The soldiers froze, shocked, but they were trained to fight, and fight they did. Blasters fired, sparks flew, the river boiled under the impact. Evan ducked behind a rock, protecting Kira as she unleashed her power in controlled bursts. Every strike sent shockwaves, bending light and air around her. "Kira, don't push too far," Evan shouted. She shook her head. "I have to stop them before they enslave anyone else." A larger ship hovered above, the flagship, and its hatch opened, revealing more soldiers. Kira's energy flared brighter, a shield of blue light surrounding the camp. Evan grabbed a nearby pipe, swinging it at a charging soldier, knocking him back. The tiny human chef fought with courage born of desperation, each strike a declaration. Humanity stood with her. Harlan managed to get the ship's engines humming, ready for escape if needed. Kira turned to Evan. "Go. Take the ship. Save yourself." Evan shook his head. "No, we finish this together." The soldiers advanced, a wall of metal and armor. Kira raised her hands, light surging outward like a sunrise across the valley. Energy struck the first row, sending them flying. But more came, relentless, trained, and merciless. Evan stepped forward, shouting, "You will not take her." He ran alongside Kira, blocking attacks, guiding her strikes. Her power and his courage created a dance of chaos. The ground trembled under their combined force, trees snapping, river waves leaping. The soldiers faltered, unsure how to fight against such impossible energy. Kira whispered, "I can finish it." Evan nodded, stepping back. "I trust you." With a deep breath, Kira raised her palms toward the sky. A pulse of blue energy shot upward, piercing the flagship above. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring, and then exploded in a brilliant flare. The remaining soldiers paused, fear breaking their formation. Kira's glow dimmed slightly, exhaustion clear in her stance. Evan ran to her side, holding her steady. "You did it. You saved us all." She smiled weakly, tears mixing with the glow of her skin. "We did it," she corrected. "Together." Harlan cheered from the cockpit. "We live to see another day, thanks to you too." Evan looked at Kira, her eyes shining brighter than any star. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. She nodded. "The galaxy is full of people like me, and worse." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure they know what kindness looks like." Together, they walked to the ship, the hidden planet quiet once more. The stars above stretched endlessly, a reminder of freedom, hope, and courage. As they lifted off, Evan glanced at Kira. "You know, you could have done all this without me." Kira shook her head. "No, you believed in me when no one else did. That made the difference." Evan smiled. "Then let's go find more people who need saving." Kira nodded, her hand brushing his. "Humans, maybe they're worth it after all." Below, the remnants of the enemy fleet drifted, broken and silent. The galaxy had tested them, tried to break them. But one human chef and one alien girl had changed the outcome. Not with weapons, not with fleets, but with courage, trust, and a small act of kindness. And somewhere in the void, a whisper echoed across the stars. "Humanity, F***, The ship soared into the infinite black, carrying them toward new adventures. A new beginning, a galaxy yet to be changed, and the legend of a human and a runaway alien, together against the universe, had just begun.